this is Sue for Parkinson, me, my journey with Parkinson's. Today I thought I'd talk about impulsiveness. Now, for many, many years before I studied to be a social worker, I found myself on the DPB, the Domestic Purposes Benefit, for people who are on their own looking after children. That's both men and women, so a sole parent can get this money from the government. And I was on that the last time because I was studying for my social work degree some years ago. And it was a choice that I had to make in order to have funds available to pay rent and look after my children. And during those years, there were very lean years, and I remember saying to my mum that I sometimes had to make a choice when I went to the supermarket. I had a very, very tight budget, and sometimes I would be out of shampoo and I would also be out of dishwashing liquid. So I knew that I could only buy one of those items in the week. So I might buy the dishwashing liquid and then I might use that to wash my hair or I might have shampoo, just enough shampoo for a couple of days, and I might use that to wash the dishes. So I remember saying this to my mum, and she said that she'd never had to do that she was always much more organised. And I said, it's not, Mum, it's not an issue of being more organised, it's a matter of economics, I suppose, if you like. It's when you're really hard up and you need two things that cost $3 each or something, you sometimes have to choose, because that $3 may not seem like much, but it can go some way towards a meal. And I remember too, when I was still with my children's father, I went shopping with my son then. He was my only child, and he was just a young lad. He was about 12 months old or thereabouts, and he was in the seat of the shopping trolley, and as they do, he was grabbing a few things off the shelf, and I had to keep taking them off him. And so I parked him in his trolley, and I thought his little hands were out of reach of anything that could cause any harm. And I came back, and he had pulled a cake, like a loaf, a fruit loaf or something like that, off the shelf, and had bitten into it through the plastic. And I was horrified. I thought I'd had him far enough away that he couldn't cause any problems. But there he was, sort of looking very pleased with himself, having tried to take a bite of this cake through the plastic. Now I looked at the price, and it was about $4.50. Now at that stage, I could buy enough mints to feed the family for that price. And I thought, shit, I can't afford to buy this. So I hold my hand up. What did I do? I extricated the loaf from my baby's sticky little fingers, and I shoved it to the back of the shelving unit, hoping nobody could see me and hoping nobody had seen my son bite the loaf. But it was just a practical reality of my life at the time, that I could bring that cake home and that would be dinner. So yeah, it was not a choice that I was very happy with, but I also didn't want to sacrifice buying something I could cook a meal with for the sake of my baby trying to munch on this cake. So yeah, it's hard when you're struggling for money. I remember when I had several times when I was very hard up and used to have to get my hair cut at a hairdressing school because they did it for very little money. I had cut corners wherever I could, and my kids lived on a place called Kublin's. They used to make 99-cent pies and white bread, and we have a thing here called 2-minute noodles, and my kids used to live on Kublin's pies, white bread, which was cheap, and 2-minute noodles, and they were all teenagers when I was studying and when I was on the DPB. And so basically anything that could fill those hollow legs of theirs, whether it had nutritional value or not, I did try, but sometimes you had to do that, and then I'd try and make it a reasonable meal for the evening. But teenagers are terrible snackers, so yeah, so that's what I used to do. Anyway, so it's just a bit of an illustration of the fact that I was quite hard up for many years, probably 4 years while I was studying, and when I qualified and started earning a decent wage, one of the things I promised myself was that I would have a decent hairdresser. And I had hairdressers over the ensuing years of my 20 years of social work, and I had hairdressers who cost me over $200 for a cut and colour. And I didn't really think a lot of it, because that was my promise to myself, that I would spend that money, that I'd have a decent salon and if they're chucked in a glass of wine when I'm getting my hair done, that's great. I'll take it. Thanks very much. So yeah, so I've had lean times and I've had times when I felt reasonably flush. And going shopping with my husband, I'd impulsively spend $200 on a couple of things that I liked. But now that I'm retired, that's very much not my lifestyle. But I've always enjoyed internet shopping. In fact, I met my husband on the internet, and I often say he was my best internet bargain of all. So anyway, I've always enjoyed internet shopping and buying things that look like a bargain, and I get bored easily, especially when I'm laid up from an operation or something like that, which we worked out the other day. I had an operation within the last 4 years. I've had 3 operations, so I think I've had more than enough. But while I was recovering, back to the topic, while I was recovering, I did quite a bit of internet shopping, buying this and that from Temu. And yes, it's not unknown to most people that know me that I do like to shop on Temu. But I was talking to my husband one day, and he said, I sent you an interesting article I thought you'd like to read. And I said, oh, what's it about? And he said, oh, basically Parkinson's. So I looked at the link that he had sent me, and it was all about this guy who was on a Parkinson's medication, and he had embezzled money. He was a lawyer, and he'd spent $600,000 for 6 antiques, and I think online gambling might have been one of them. And he basically just stole money so that he could feed his habits. And so I read that article with interest, and then I started to think, why? Because my husband had mentioned it to me a couple of times about had I seen the article yet. I said, oh, no, I've been busy, I've been doing some stuff. And so I thought, I better go read this article that he's wanting me to read. And I read this article, and I thought, gosh, that's really extreme, that lack of impulse control. And I know when I was first diagnosed and the specialist had given me some medications, I can't remember which one it was, and he said it can affect impulse control, and just basically a gentle warning to look out for that if it became problematic. So when I read the article, I went to my husband and I said, actually no, I sent him an email because he was busy at the time and so was I. I sent him an email and said, read the article, it's very interesting, and maybe we need to talk. So I had things to do, so I went out and about, and I came back and said to him, can we have that catch up now? And he said, yeah, sure. So we had a bit of a catch up, and I said, honey, that article that you referred me to was very interesting, but I'm wondering, are you concerned about my spending? Like I said, Temu. And he said, no, not really. Why do you think that? I said, oh, it's just that you seemed quite keen for me to read this article and wondered whether you were worried about my Temu shopping. And he said, well, no, not really, but at the moment you're not on any income, you're using your KiwiSaver, which is superannuation. And he said, you don't have a lot spare. And I said, yeah, you're right. I said, and when I think about it, I can be very impulsive when it comes to Temu. It's one of those things, if you order over a certain amount, you get free shipping. So anyway, so I have been a very enthusiastic Temu purchaser in the past. I have bought some really useful things and at good prices, so that's not the issue for me. But I was concerned that he might have been concerned about me and didn't know how to talk to me about it. So I said to him, are you sure you're not concerned about it? Because I do like to shop on Temu. And he said, yeah, I know that. He said, it's your money, and he indicated that he wasn't that concerned at the moment. But what I said to him was, thank you for sending that article to me. It made me think, and yes, I can be very impulsive when it comes to buying things on the internet. And I want to say that I appreciate, if it wasn't your original intention, I appreciate you bringing it to my attention by sending me the article. And I will very much try to endeavour to be more controlled in my spending. And he said, well, I tried to point anything out to you, it was just an interesting article, but I just said to him, this is good. I'm opening the door for you to say to me, I'm concerned about your spending, I'm concerned about your shopping. And I'm open to having those discussions. So please don't be concerned if you want to do that. And yeah, he said he had no concerns at the moment, but I think it's good to have that dialogue. I asked him on several occasions, have you noticed that I've got more word finding difficulty, which I have. And he said, not especially, but I opened this dialogue about my memory, about my shopping, about a number of things. I'm very open to discussing what's happening with me. And I just took the opportunity to talk to him, to say, hey, if you are concerned about my shopping or anything else that might be linked to my Parkinson's, I'm open to us talking about it. And I think that's important, to be open and to have that dialogue so that you can continue to have a relationship, as we do, built on trust and understanding. So yeah, this has just been Sue for Parkinson Me, my journey with Parkinson's. Kia kaha, be brave, be strong, be you.